Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Chrissy here. On today's episode, we have Sruthi Kumar, who's the Director of Demand Generation at TripActions. Before that, Sruthi was actually at one of our clients at CS2, Sendoso, and I first got connected with her through Women in Revenue. Over the past 2 years, we've stayed in contact, and I look at Sruthi as being a great example of a marketer who has been in more of a traditional field marketer role, but has expanded that and is really epitome of a great integrated campaign marketer. Especially throughout COVID, she's a great example of showing what it's like to be a resilient marketer, and really when you're faced with different challenges, how you can really drive pipeline, talk about that, and provide that for your team. So welcome, Sruthi. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Chrissy, and thanks for the warm welcome. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I just gave a little bit of your background, but can you first, start by talking a little bit about your career and how you got to being a director of demand generation now, but, talk about your path before that, just to give a little background.
Yeah, of course. So started as a marketing intern. So I was one of the few that just started right in the marketing org, and it was very exciting. I worked at an event tech company, then moved on to more of a customer experience platform. A lot of predictive analytics and AI were involved. And this was before the AI was the hottest term in the industry. So that was really exciting too. And then moved on to IT analytics. And then I found myself at Sendoso. And for those of you who are not familiar with Sendoso, they are sending platforms. So direct mail, sweets, treats, booze, perishable items, anything that's really going to move your relationships forward in the business world. And so supporting marketing and sales teams. And so got lucky to meet you during that part of my journey. I was the first marketing hire there, so I wore many hats, but then eventually fell into the realm of field and partner marketing. And throughout my 3.5 years there, built a lot of, skills and opinions around integrated marketing. And now I have recently just started at TripActions. And so if you're not familiar, TripActions is the leading cloud-based travel and expense platform that combines industry-leading technology with the best-in-class travel agency service. And so if we have time, I can definitely get into some of my best moments as a TripActions customer. So excited to actually be here as an employee now. And like you said, I'm director of demand gen, and I'm supporting growth for our TripActions liquid product. It's our company's spend management solution. So really excited to, move from customer experience to IT analytics to MarTech and now more in FinTech. So excited to wear a new hat here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very exciting. And I see, I'm happy for TripActions. I bet you're going to do a lot of amazing things, especially with a new product. And, your last role being a first marketer at Sendoso, a growing company that definitely has evolved in your time there. So I'm excited to see what you'll do there. So to kick it off, I wanted to first have you chat about the role of the field marketer and how that has changed and how a successful field marketer has evolved, during COVID and being into more of a integrated marketer. Because obviously, you did that. You were doing that even before COVID, and I think a lot of marketers kind of were forced to take suit during that. But can you talk a little bit about how that's changed? Like, what is the role of a field marketer? What's the goal for them, and what are the campaigns they're working on?
Okay, cool. So this is going to be a little segment of the history of field marketing. So I'm going to take you back. And so really the original field marketers were located in business centers based on HQ initiatives. So they're telling the stories in each of their geos. And so you had your field marketing by geo supporting that field sales team. And field marketing was very synonymous with events. And so you move forward a little bit, and because this was the point of view even before the pandemic hit. This was not, pre-pandemic, and then it was this crazy shift right at the pandemic. It was a gradual shift that some people felt, and some people were already adopting, being like, maybe, the field marketing team doesn't need to be by geo, but, just one marketer's opinion. And so then you move a little forward into the pandemic and or right before the pandemic, and you started seeing field marketers not being limited to just events. And I truly thought that a field marketer was already giving a very digital journey. So I wish I could have a graphic right here to walk you through it, but I will walk you through it. So it would be digital touch point, digital touch point, digital touch point, break with the physical touch point, and then digital again. So that would be, you're going to a conference and you're sending out a marketing email being like, hey, we have a free code to this conference. You guys should come. Then you have a social tweet, you have an SDR outreach, you have a phone call, but these are all emails and phone calls, all digital. And then the break from this digital experience for your prospect or customer was actually just the physical event. And then you do follow up and you're back to digital. You have your marketing email, that blanket email that goes out. Thanks for attending. We were so happy to meet you. And then you have your personalized SDR outreach going out. And that is, that's truly a digital journey. And so as we go into the pandemic, what we saw was there was no break in with a physical part of that journey. It was just digital. And that's where, field marketers started really employing direct mail and other things that they could send that would be the physical part of that journey. So if people were doing a virtual event on a video conferencing tool, they could employ sending wine to accompany that experience that's happening online. And so that would have been the break. So now we're venturing into this point where in-person's back. And so now, business travel is back. We can bring back that in-person element. And so the field marketer's role has fundamentally changed. And I have a hunch that really successful field marketers will be the ones to employ a hybrid approach with the in-person and physical elements, which were all our pre-COVID tactics. So setting up meetings at a booth, having really high touch VIP events surrounding a trade show or conference, along with the digital components that the field marketer would have mastered during this last year and a half, being limited to just virtual experiences. So that is kind of my view of how the field marketer's journey has changed.
I like that you broke that down for everyone, because I think it's a good point that it was evolving before COVID. I think we saw that, because even, before everything was so traditional, you go to a trade show, you would, get your leads there. And then, but I think that kind of slowly declined because it was more for the company to figure out, how can you do more? How can we engage with a prospect before they even get there? How can we get them excited about actually going and visiting us? Like, how can we be targeted? I think ABM played a role in that too, because we had to then work with a sales team or figure out, how do we get the right people? Because, you do a trade show, you go in blind, like you might be just subject to whoever happens to stop by your booth. That's not going to get you the great results that you need. So it needs to be a bit more targeted than that, right? So then you're focusing
definitely
way more before that to draw, and like you said, it's a lot of digital touch points to get there.
Yeah. I'm glad you said ABM too. I have a boss from a past life that would equate field marketing with ABM. And he'd be like, okay, well, we don't have a true ABM initiative, but you're doing ABM. And I'd always be like, yeah, I guess you're right, because we're going to this event. We kind of maybe know who's going to be there based on our past presence there, which I will say is hard when you're an early stage company and you've never done those events before, but you end up building it and then you get there. But then you kind of target that list and then you can show up to the event, and in-person events are so expensive. And so you're also trying to drive major business value before, during, and after. Otherwise, if you're just going to show up and be like, hey all, we're here, you're not going to get the ROI on that huge investment. And you're going to have a lot of business leaders and executives kind of asking, why should we do another one? And so also as the field marketer, you have to be, and I think this continues pre, post, and now past pandemic is you have to be the advocate for why an event is going to work. You're flying people out. There's a lot of T&E involved. So how are you going to justify that to, your CFO and COO and CMO, which are all the, the executives that probably care what's going on.
Totally. That's a good point too, because I think, yeah, events, and I think traditional events were so, so expensive, and that does put a lot of pressure on it. Like whenever I worked in the past, and I've had, demand gen roles and have selected events, and it was always what caught the eye of like the CEO, like, what are we doing at that event? Like, how are we making sure, because they look at it as a massive investment, but also a massive presence, opportunity. And so it's very rarely do you get the CEO coming by and say, how are PPC ads going?
But not as flashy, right?
No,
events are flashy. There's a lot of excitement behind it. And you actually also get to be this person within the company that's putting all your spirit in there. Like, you think about being in college and going to, weekend football games and stuff like that. This is the same thing. You have everyone wearing your team colors. You have everyone drinking the Kool-Aid and giving out the swag. It's really exciting. Now I can't wait to get back in person. That's really exciting. Just excited myself about going back to in-person trade shows.
Yeah, I think it's that, wanting to get, but everyone's craving, human interaction. But bridging into the next part, I think it would be interesting to go through you talking, and you can maybe give an example of something, integrated campaign that you built maybe at Sendoso, or, give a broad example, but what do you think makes a great, successful integrated campaign around an event? Like you talked through those touch points, but especially one like a virtual event, maybe talk about that first and how you actually, because I think when everyone moved to virtual, right, it was hard. Like, how do we get people to just get on another video conferencing event, really? But it didn't look much different than the calls they were doing all day long. So, how do you get their attention? But also everyone's doing them because everyone was like trying to figure out. So what was something that you did, and as far as like creating that whole campaign to actually create an experience and also ensure that your prospects actually went to your event?
Okay, great. So I can talk about all of this. So first of all, just in a higher level, a successful campaign is something that you can get your whole team to rally around. And then with that, we'll follow the numbers, right? Because you have your AEs, your SDRs, your CSMs, and the rest of your marketing team really rallying around this. There is no way that you're not going to get value out of that. And so the field marketer can still master using events to drive pipeline and revenue, but we need to make sure that we're using multiple channels around the event, to drive to the event, to drive and to send the same message around the event. Because if there's someone who isn't visiting your landing page for your event, maybe they'll hear you on a podcast. Maybe they'll read a blog of yours from LinkedIn. Like there's so many different ways to get this message out to the same person. And so some of those tools can be direct mail. Surprised that I said it. I'm surprising everyone. But direct mail, emails, social, road shows to accompany a large event. So obviously that one's more in person, but digital ads, SDR and AE outreach, CSM outreach, content, blogs, PR. Even when you're thinking about your go-to-market team, definitely don't limit it just to SDR, AE, CSMs. Like at Sendoso, we had an account management team that handled a lot of our customer relationships. So that was a team we would go to a lot too. So it's kind of endless possibilities, and it really depends on your company's brand and what has worked, and also what channels work for you. And then do you guys have the money to test out and try something different? But essentially you're just trying to hit your target audience with the same message in multiple channels. And doing this virtually was living and learning when we did it at Sendoso. So during my time there, we did 3 large-scaled virtual events every other quarter. So that was May 2020, then September 2020, and then most recently March 2021. So those were our 3 big ones, and just the changes and everything we learned from, May 2020 to September 2021 was massive. First of all, early on, we got really lucky. We were um, capturing the momentum of how much people wanted to learn, and they didn't really care how anymore, because there was a novelty of being able to join an event in your house slippers and your robe, and no one needs to see you. Right. And no, there was this novelty early on in the pandemic of it's kind of cool working from home. This is kind of fun. I don't mind working at my kitchen table. And then there was a point where we all kind of up leveled our home offices because we're like, my back hurts and why is this happening? But anyways, so kind of that shift that happened to September 2021, we realized we really, really have to be cognizant of how we're getting this message out. And so our most recent, Sendoso's most recent virtual event was Connected. We outperformed our other programs that we had done virtually before, like just hit it out of the park, hit it out of the water. It was crazy. We had 18 paid sponsors, and we'd gone from having 12 non-paid sponsors early on in the pandemic. And so even just realizing that people were going to pay, or our partners were going to pay us to have them there, it was kind of a massive validation. And we had blogs, we had PR go around it. We had an excellent director of corporate marketing who helped tell our story. We actually had we had paid speakers. So we had Jenna Friedman, who most recently just won an Emmy, I think, for writing Borat too. So that was pretty cool. And Seth Godin, big fan. If you guys can go to an event where he is speaking, definitely tune in. You won't be disappointed. You can also watch the on-demand version of Seth Godin on Sendoso.com. So you can go check that out too. There may or may not be a shout out for me on there. So it was pretty cool. That was a highlight of my career and highlight of my time with that event as well. And what else we did a lot of direct mail. We sent out a lot of incentives. And so that's a really good way to incentivize people to come is if you're the first 200 people to log on, they got the Connected themed puzzle. You have to create a lot of FOMO, so that's fear of missing out, and you want to also create this one of a kind experience. And so even before going into the pandemic, our field marketing strategy was actually to have branded swag at events that were only available at that one event. And so what we were seeing were people coming up and we're like, oh, we have 3 pairs of your socks and we love them. Great. But it's all the same design because we saw them in another trade show. That's cool. But what if someone was like, I wanted something new? And so it also created more of a kind of excitement to actually come and meet with us. And so we employed that same tactic as we went into virtual. We did VIP events. We did, wine tastings. There's the sky is the limit. With virtual, it's also nice because there's some things you can pre-record. There's some things you can do live, and you can also kind of employ those moments too to incentivize people to come be like, hey, this paid speaker who you're going to learn a lot from is actually live, and you can ask live questions. And so there's a lot of, different things we can do. We did paid social. We did massive amount of emails. Email was our biggest driver for registrations, and all of those included cameos from top celebrities. We had e-gifts. So if you signed up from that email, you would get a DoorDash gift card. So there were a lot of different plays there that we had, and we ended up going into our second week before the event already of hitting our reg goal. And so we had a stretch reg goal, and we hit that too. And so it was super validating and amazing because just for the event before, we'd been struggling to get to our really large goal we'd given ourselves. So this was great to see that happen. And it was because of our integrated approach, 100%.
Yeah. And first of all, that's amazing. I think for a lot of marketers, I think the key here is to focus on how do you just, have an exponential effect on it? How can we add more, or what else can we do to kind of boost our, activity or engagement or create this experience? And that's one of the benefits too. Like you said, field marketers before were moving away from being regional, but now with these types of events like Connected, there's no sense of region, right? Like people, I mean, yes, there might be certain regions like globally that can't attend because of the time zone, but but really like you're hitting so many people. Your speakers you can reach out to has expanded. Your prospects you're reaching out to expanded. So instead of, like you said, doing like a road show of like 10 different locations, and that requires a lot of logistics, you can actually focus on one. But that also means that it sounds like you can do a lot more just for that one event, and being creative around creating smaller experiences or engagement or touch points that feel more personalized outside of that. But the thing that caught me is
And
it. Oh, go ahead.
100%. Oh,
Uh,
well, and one of the things I missed out on saying was actually being really, the message that you're telling should be really in line with even what PMM is coming, or what product is coming out with, what updates. So connected, that one of the big themes was kind of tied in with a major release we had just had. And so it became very relevant for not just our prospects, but our customers who had just heard this recent, recent product updates. And so you can't really discount working with, being integrated with any team. Obviously, content and digital comes to mind pretty quickly, but there's so many other teams that if you're coordinated with and speaking to, it kind of pays off at the end.
yeah. Well, that's actually what I was going to mention, was actually around alignment. Because what's something that you do to kind of set that stage, or get like the different teams on board for supporting this initiative? Like, do you start out with like a planning meeting and invite those different teams? Like, especially with sales, like they're busy, but like they can obviously, reap the rewards from what you're doing. But oftentimes, are just focused on whatever is in front of them, which is their current pipeline. But how do you kind of pull in those different teams that need to be part of this campaign? Like how do you instill that alignment?
So it's definitely every person in the company and your team can work towards this. So it was definitely a joint effort between our CMO and the rest of the directors on the team and the people that are actually like doing the work. In the team. So our CMO played an important role as they were getting executives on board and doing that. And then also me being again, the field marketer needs to be the advocate for the event and being like, hey, we're going to get sponsor money, but we also need to put in our own money in order to drive this much more. And then also pulling in, I think one of the big things is identify the sales leaders and the CS leaders and even the individual contributors that know how events and programs pay off. And then they can be your like kind of internal secret cheerleaders as they're talking to their peers of like, hey, why should I invite people to this event? Hey man, I closed a bunch of deals from the last one we did, or, I had a lot of, meetings booked from the SDRs are like, I had a lot of good traction from the people that attended. So, the more we can get people to register, then more people will attend because that's just percentage wise. So I think having internal advocates were really important from the IC into the executives. And so that's one big thing for alignment. And yeah, I started off with just calls. And I individually we were in a small enough organization where I could individually reach out to and be like, hey, we're doing this. This is the date. Need you to help me rally the team. And we would also, I think a lot of teams did this, move into a more regular cadence, all hands, not just quarterly, but maybe monthly. For us at Sendoso, it was weekly. And so we would actually send out e-gift cards to top performers of the week of who invited the most. And this would scale the entire team from our alliances, SDR team to AEs and CSMs and AMs. So, and it was fun and people liked having, something to look forward to and be like, am I going to win this week? And then as we, move to larger organizations like the one I'm at now, we have a large in-person, not large, but I think we have our largest event coming up in September. And so we're actually going in person. So that's going to be really exciting. But, once you're at bigger brands too, people know how to, people kind of join the company knowing, hey, this is going to come up and it's going to be really exciting. So creating that excitement within the team too, of like doing giveaways and talking on every all hands that you can, whether it's just to a sales team or to the whole company. And it's I'm kind of watching from the sidelines now, not being the one who's running lead, and I'm watching our director of field marketing and events go on and join every call she can and plug it in, and it kind of exists on every slide that we're presenting. And it's been really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, no, that I think that's great. And it will be interesting, I think, for you to maybe not be in that role, but know like that, seeing it firsthand. And that's very interesting. The one thing I wanted to pick up from what you're talking about too, like you slightly touched on talking about pipeline or like the ROI or revenue from your events, especially around like in-person events are expensive. But I want to dive into, I think you are an example of a, revenue and pipeline focused marketer. And I think for some folks, especially if they're more started through field marketing and that was a lot of events that they were working on, they don't feel as comfortable talking about pipeline or even looking at reports for it, or even, or revenue. And sometimes that can be a bit intimidating for them. But how do you think marketers can feel more comfortable looking at the data? Or what are some things you've done, like, maybe working with your marketing operations team to provide you some reporting or insights that can really help you make decisions, know where to invest your time, your money, and maybe decide, where to improve certain campaigns or which campaigns to not do?
Okay, cool. So I can talk about this in like a larger picture, and then I can get more tactical of how hopefully maybe there's field marketers out there or leaders that lead field marketing teams that can kind of pick up on some of this. But when business leaders put the field marketing team in a box for just events, there is a massive value add that's being missed. First of all, if you take a look from the outside of what field marketing provides to the business, we just talked about this, large user conferences, that's a huge part of your brand. And also a huge place of where people know that there is going to be business added at, after that program happens. And then also segmented programs. So thinking of this ABM approach for geos, verticals, and segments, i.e. like me supporting the growth of one of our products, and not doesn't discount how much I should know about the rest of what we're selling, but it's always good to have segmented programs. So both of these, no matter what scale they are actually vessels to carry the brand and demand. And by marrying brand and demand strategies, you're essentially going to drive more pipeline, especially when you're marrying it with other channels as well. And so I just don't really feel that revenue and other success metrics should be siloed to just the MOPS and demand gen teams. I think different departments, and not just field marketing, but other teams, can all be empowered to think of end-line metrics. So, how do impressions from PR turn into opportunities? I know just from watching that's kind of a hard place to be, but there are ways to tell that story still using data. And so specifically for field marketers or anyone who executes programs, start with the goals. And so this is where I'm going to move more into my tactical advice. Don't just be like, we should have an event. Someone on this podcast said, events are really important to drive brand. We should do events. Start with the goals. Look at your business goals and then work backwards. How much pipeline do we need to build in order for the sales to close that amount in order for us to get to this end number? And what can we do from this program? And so just before approaching anything, think about the business value you need to drive from it. And then the next big pillar, which I don't want to discount, is the experience. So when you build an incredible experience, it's easier to get your team to rally around. And when your team feels like they can rally around it, you can use all the levers at your disposal to drive registration or downloads or whatever that CTA is. And while you're running these programs, I think for me, what I learned in 3.5 years at Sendoso, we had a really strong MOPS leader. And so she would sit down with me and be like, this is the way I would look at the data. And so we all come in with our different strengths. And so being able to use that and be like, hey, how can I learn from my team members? This is maybe not, I'm not, that is really cool that you said that I'm a data-driven field marketer. That makes me feel so proud because it's still an insecurity of mine. I still don't feel like that is the quickest language in my head. And so having the conversations with the people around you who are strong at that is really important because they will see things the way you don't see things. And so one of the things that she empowered me with was actually dashboards to each event, so each program that we were running, and also overall. So very quickly, I could then look at all this information and then be more fluent when I was talking to our executive team. And that's when people feel like, oh, our investment matters here. We got to keep using events. Events was a huge part of our brand at Sendoso. And now it's actually been one of the easiest transitions for me now to be part of the demand gen team, where everyone lives off of our metric docs, and to come in seeing the same type of dashboards built for each of our segments. And so I think it's different for everyone. Some people are going to hate me if I say I look at my MQL number. People are going to be like, I can't listen to anything else she said. She believes in MQLs, but each team is, kind of measured differently. And so we look at Sendoso, we looked at influence pipeline created, or influence closed won. And we also looked at first touch, last touch pipeline, first touch, last touch, closed won, as you know, because we worked with you as well on this. And a lot of it was like how to find attribution from events. And now at TripActions, it's a lot of the similar numbers. We look at our MQLs, we look at meetings held, we look at sales qualified opportunities. So those are the big numbers that I'm starting my day with every morning, being like, okay, what does our segment look like this morning? What were the recent programs that we ran? And then going into each campaign report and actually looking at, wow, we got a lot of MQLs from this. So why haven't we had any squoze come from this? And then actually individually clicking into those and being like, what happened? And what are the conversations happening? And I think there's probably some people out there who are going to be like, that's really tactical, but that's why you have big teams. And that's why you have team members that, can do this. And if it's something, and if you're a small team, I was there 3.5 years ago. I was a team of 1 and then 2 and then 3. So, we were a small team for a long time. And I think once it's in your DNA, it's easy to scale that metric and data-driven approach. And because one of our early hires was MOPS focused in her profession and also just personality, it kind of was in our DNA, just the same way events was in our DNA because I was there. So I think that's one of the things you can do, kind of like pull the, intelligence and point of views from the people around you.
Totally. And I think that's good. Like you're, because you're one person, right? And I think the thing that I pick up here is like, how do you best leverage the people around you? How do you find your champions? How do you find resources that can help you make these decisions? And I think, partnering with your marketing ops person or someone who's close to the data, even if you don't feel comfortable, just having those conversations, like, saying like, do you have like an office hours, or can we just schedule some time on like a Friday and you can, start out and we can first talk about it. Then maybe it can get some of your time to help build a dashboard when you have it, and like, slowly start from there. But I think finding that, expert and then learning from them, I think is key. So I love that. And having those dashboards too, like, don't just feel like you have to make decisions blind. Like, no one on the marketing team should feel that way. Like, you should be making improvements or data-driven decisions. Even if it's just simple, like you said, like if it's MQLs, that's an early metric on if you're even getting the right people to your events or, responding to your campaigns. That's not a bad metric. But then beyond that, you can get some simple influence pipeline reporting out of like Salesforce pretty easily if you're leveraging campaigns. So you don't need to, there's always a way to pull some data to tell a story. And but finding people that can help you do that, I think is a good spot. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, but I did want to end with talking about expanding your skill set. And also, I think you have a personal goal of being a CMO one day. I feel very confident that's probably going to happen, and you're on that path, but what do you think has helped you expand your skill set in marketing? You've done so much. You've been early hires and now working in a larger company, but what do you think are some of the ways you expanded your skill set, and or other like mentorship opportunities or something you've had that you feel has been um, really helping you with your career trajectory?
So yeah, it's no secret. My North Star is to be a CMO one day. And so one of the things that I always felt was, how do I get there with events? I love events, and it's actually I think you can already, if you're listening to this and you don't know me, I think you can kind of get that, like, I'm pretty outgoing. And so it's kind of in my personality to be kind of talkative. And really, really, I love, you know, going to events and doing all of that, and networking is part of that. And so quickly I realized I needed to talk to people that maybe had similar journeys as me. And so luckily, our CEO at Sendoso and co-founder Chris Rudigrap has this really great advisor program that he started building. And one of the things I learned from him was actually networking and really how to leverage those conversations to, benefit other people, but also benefit me. And so I started looking at people, and I started seeing very quickly that a lot of CMOs didn't have a path from field marketing. I actually saw a stronger path from product. And then demand gen was the next one. And so, which I think could be argued, and that could be a later conversation, but I was like, how do I get there? And so I started just talking to people. And one of the conversations that, and I don't think she'd mind me shouting her out, is Latney from Sixth Sense. She came from field marketing, and she's a CMO today, and has been leaders of marketing teams before that as well. And so she's kind of the one who started putting it in my head, like, you being a field marketer is being an integrated marketer. And how do you bring people together, and how are you driving revenue? Like, that's the CMO's job, right? And so today, now when I think about what it is to be a CMO, I realized for being a field marketer, I was able to take myself out of that box of just using one channel. And so in my case, that was obviously events. And I was able to see the larger picture of how all the channels worked together. And, I also think that field marketing allowed me to be cross-functional, as we're talking about how do you get the whole team rallying around one kind of big initiative that your company's spending money on. It allowed me to be cross-functional and think of campaigns and programs from like start to finish. So like, what are the goals? What's pre-event? What are the logistics of the program? What does the day of look like? And then post-event. And it also helped me learn budget management. And so when I think about being a CMO, I think about, first of all the tactical stuff, budget management, being cross-functional, driving business value, and being the one in the room and the table that understands brand, demand, growth opportunities, and product positioning all together. And then also being just, I think, good person, and like being a good leader and someone that people want to follow and feel excited about working with you every day. And so one of the big things was networking, and also just like going out to different communities and trying to talk to people. And so that was Pavilion, which were formerly known as Revenue Collective, Women in Revenue, which is where we met, and just volunteering for things and trying to chat with people. And so I think that's my biggest advice for anyone out there who wants to be a CMO one day, or any type of, I have friends who want to just be any VP and on the marketing team. You don't have to be wanting to be a CMO, but there's so many amazing ways that you can go out and reach out to people to learn, and to expand your, knowledge base and network along with that. So.
Totally. Yeah. I think also it's sometimes, you're outgoing, but for people who aren't as outgoing, it can be a little bit, a daunting task to like network. But there's so many different type of networking examples and activity that can just be finding a really strong mentor. There's a lot of different communities that do that. Women in Revenue, connects people. We have a Slack community. The Pavilion, like you said, Revenue Collective has opportunities for that too. So it
Or
doesn't have to
take a friend
Yeah.
who can work in the room, because I have been that friend. for my, my counterparts who aren't as outgoing as me. I 100% know that not everyone is an extrovert. So try to find someone in the room that looks like they're friendly and can take you along for the ride, or go with a friend already. So
yeah, definitely. Well, and I think that's how we met too. So just networking activities can just, be a blessing. But we are out of time, but I want to say thank you so much, Sruthi. I think you have provided so much insight and really like inspiration to some field marketers or integrated campaign marketers, any marketer really, like to start, you know, you have so much enthusiasm and excitement that you bring to what you're working on and how to make things better and how to work, cross-functionally, which I think are, amazing traits of a marketer and what we need today, right? We're one team moving toward a common goal. And I think in some ways that gets lost, but thank you so much for your time today.
thank you so much, Chrissy. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. And for those of you who want to learn more about Sruthi, we'll link to her LinkedIn in the description of the podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to share it with your friends. And we'll see you on the next episode of Forward Thinking. Have a good one.